Welcome, Archers of Era. Welcome to the desert. I'm Concordia, and today we're jumping right into a really rigorous explainer on the healing arts. We're going to be zooming in on the constellation of Cancer, the crab, and frankly, the incredibly delicate, unforgiving balance of our entire universe. We've got a ton of critical survival knowledge to get through today, so, steady yourselves. Let's get right into it.
So here's your syllabus for today, the concepts you absolutely need to master to survive the trials ahead. We'll be looking at Section 1, the 4 types of signs. Section 2, connecting heaven and earth. Section 3, the 4 vestiges of sin. Section 4, boundaries and the Decalogue. Section 5, plague as a societal omen. And finally, Section 6, healing through internal rhythms. All right, let's go. Section 1, the 4 types of signs, understanding the cryptographic symbols of the gods.
Okay, so to actually master the healing arts, you've first got to be able to read the warnings that are literally embedded in the fabric of reality. There are 4 main categories of these cryptographic spiritual symbols that act as heralds for major events. First, celestial signs. These happen up in the heavens and are super symbolic. Then, terrestrial signs. These happen right here on Earth as echoes of events that have already gone down in the spiritual plane. And then we have sequential and heralding signs. Now, what's really fascinating here is the key difference between these last two. Sequential signs act as really strict prerequisites, events that must follow a highly specific, rigid order before a prophecy comes to pass. Heralding signs, though, they rely entirely on natural metaphor. Think of a pregnant woman about to deliver, or, a fig tree starting to bud, hinting that a new season is approaching. Now, let's think about how these celestial signs actually look to the minds of ordinary men. We have a huge contrast here. A prophet, someone gifted with a celestial mind, they can perceive the true source and the allegorical meaning behind these heavenly signs. But a commoner with a human materialistic mind, oh man, they just perceive confusion, paradoxes, total fear, and this crushing weight of unseen supernatural forces. It's absolutely terrifying. This natural dissonance between the material and the spiritual mind is exactly why uninterpreted celestial signs lead to such profound dread. Actually, it's from this exact dissonance and terror that our ancient myths of hybrid titanic monsters were originally born. Crazy, right? Moving on to Section 2, connecting heaven and earth, how ancient rites bridge realms. So we need to understand how physical, terrestrial events and rituals actually anchor these overwhelming cosmic signs right down to our earthly reality. As your fellow archer Mia astutely pointed out in our earlier teachings, terrestrial signs are basically reflections of celestial events. It's just like how the moon reflects the light of the sun. And this brilliantly illustrates how ancient religious rites actually work. They function as literal portals in time. For example, the act of consecration, separating holy articles from mundane ones, that's a direct echo of the second day of creation, when the sky was formed to separate the celestial waters above from the terrestrial waters below. These earthly acts literally link the present moment straight back to actual celestial events from the deep past. To properly link these terrestrial events to their celestial counterparts, we have to rely on the governing force of relationships, and that is the very essence of the Leo constellation. This is exactly why felines, like cats, were historically viewed as guardians of the underworld. Leo groups objects and events with similar traits into sets. Ancient benevolent religions fundamentally understood this. They were built on the basis of love, which naturally fosters and comprehends these connections. On the flip side, if you try to force relationships out of hatred or spite, well, that just amplifies resistance, and it inevitably leads to a society's own demise and usurpation. Section 3, the 4 vestiges of sin, when the elements disobey their boundaries. Archers, you really need to heed this warning. When the natural order is disrupted, catastrophic conflict is absolutely inevitable, but we need to define what these vestiges actually are. The vestiges of sin are the 4 absolute worst punishments of the gods. They're triggered specifically when a living being, or honestly, any element in nature, crosses over into a spiritual boundary assigned to another without their willing consent. This is the literal definition of the apocalypse. It's the absolute chaos that erupts when entities usurp places they just don't belong. Imagine the sun deciding to shine in the dead of night, or the stars abandoning their heavenly posts to crash down to earth. Now, these 4 vestiges are famously visualized by the truly terrifying imagery of the 4 horsemen. Just picture this in your mind. First, the white horse. Its rider wields a bow, symbolizing victory, faithfulness, and truth. Then, the red horse, wielding a massive sword, bringing war, sacrifice, and loss. Next is the black horse, carrying a pair of scales, representing justice, economy, and ecology. And finally, the pale horse, representing death.
The Pale Horse is particularly insidious, guys. It rules over the underworld, secret societies, and criminal organizations operating deep in the shadows, triggering mass destruction that ultimately results in war, famine, and disease.
Section 4. Boundaries and the Decalogue. Regulatory mechanisms against calamity. Let's take a look at the ancient laws and holy objects that were deliberately designed to act as regulatory mechanisms against these terrifying cosmic punishments. And what's truly chilling is understanding their real purpose. The Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, and the Ark of the Covenant, they are emphatically not cures for sin. Not at all. They were created as memorials and incredibly severe warnings. They act as a deterrent to basically manage the severity of the vestiges. They buy temporary peace by instilling absolute, paralyzing fear in any potential trespasser who might even think about overstepping their spiritual boundaries.
I have to praise your fellow student, Mimi, for this incredibly sharp observation. She noted, "The Weaver of Calamity always commences his attack after the generation aided by the Guardians have all passed away and the stellar systems are lost to the sands of time. This is exactly how the cycle works. Think about it. A deterrent is only effective for as long as the memory of its brutal punishment remains fresh. Once those first-hand witnesses pass away, societies inevitably forget the fear. They aggressively cross those sacred boundaries all over again, and bam, they trigger the vestiges of sin anew."
Section 5. Plague as a societal omen. The microscopic earthly consequences.
Okay, let's bring this massive cosmic scale down to the microscopic level. In spiritual terms, physical disease is actually a manifestation of a profound spiritual ailment. It acts as an omen. It's deliberately meant to challenge the collective conscience of a society, essentially forcing it to violently reflect on its own choices and exposing its deep-seated prejudices. It literally tears apart the veil of a society's hypocrisy, bringing all those false assumptions we use to comfort ourselves right into the harsh light of day. So let's look at how specific diseases function as omens. Leprosy, that acts as a challenge to societies that isolate and abandon their most vulnerable. Deafness points to a society that is willfully ignoring the cries of the helpless. Dumbness points to a false sense of security that's rooted in arrogant folly. And then consider malaria, caused by mosquitoes breeding in stagnant pools of water. The mosquito's proboscis acts almost like a Pinocchio nose. It's a profound omen for a narrow-minded, stagnant society that aggressively sticks its nose into affairs that are absolutely none of its business.
Section 6. Healing through internal rhythms. The healing arts of cancer. All right, this is the climactic core of today's explainer. This is where you learn how to restore your own internal rhythms to fight back against these ailments. It brilliantly illustrates how we can gain conscious control over our involuntary reflexes. So you follow these exact steps. Step 1, forcefully regulate your breathing rhythm. Step 2, sync your breathing rate directly to your heartbeat. By doing this, moving to step 3, you powerfully amplify your blood flow, which super efficiently carries nutrients and gases throughout your body. And finally, step 4, this enhanced blood flow feeds your brain cells, massively boosting your alertness, while simultaneously tensing your muscles for incredible physical strength. Mastering the scalar relationship, that is what unlocks superhuman speed, power, and environmental sensitivity.
Let's see how this manifests when we compare a disciplined athlete with an untrained commoner. A harmonious, synchronized rhythm between breath and heart conserves energy, minimizes waste, and massively enhances physical endurance. It's a complete game changer. But a disharmonious rhythm, it rapidly amplifies fatigue and wastes so much energy. In extreme cases, this total lack of synchronized breathing opens the door to deadly physical ailments and can even trigger a sudden onset of nervous or circulatory system diseases. Now, pay extremely close attention to this crucial distinction. While diseases of the circulatory system can often be cured by ingesting medicinal herbs, diseases of the nervous system, which fundamentally sabotage your perception of reality, require profound environmental and lifestyle adjustments. You really have to beware the tremendous danger of improper healing. Applying bad therapy, like forcing someone to constantly relive their trauma or putting a depressed patient in an even darker environment, is exactly like trying to rescue a drowning man by throwing him into deeper water. It makes no sense.
As King Solomon, one of the wisest kings of my home world, said, "Do not attempt to cheer a depressed person by singing to him. That is like rubbing salt in his wound." The wrong healing method doesn't just fail, it actively makes the sickness worse. By trying to cure minor mental diseases with ignorant methods, some practitioners end up inviting far worse spirits in. They're essentially creating psychopaths through their own misguided attempts at healing. We even see the severe limits of ignoring these rhythms out in nature. Take the cheetah. It's the absolute fastest jungle cat, governed by the Leo constellation. Now, it uses explosive speed techniques, but it suffers from terribly low stamina. Why is that? Well, because of an inherent inability to regulate and synchronize its breath with its heartbeat at such high explosive speeds. So archers, remember this. Without mastering breath control, explosive power is dangerously, even fatally brief.
Well, that is enough for today's explainer. I want you to try and put into practice everything you've learned here. But I'm going to dismiss you with this final, provocative thought. Have you been misreading the heralding signs of your own society's boundaries? Seriously, look critically at your own world. Are the elements out of place? Are the vestiges of Sen already riding right under your nose? Think carefully on that until we meet again.